Hello, welcome to today's episode of Ask Sibs. Hope you had a lovely weekend. It's Monday again, apparently called Blue Monday. I was chatting with Harriet and Chris this morning and our team about this notion of Blue Monday, and the idea is that it's the third Monday of the new year. It's still wintry. It's still, the whole darker, colder situation. It's still not yet payday. Everyone spent money at Christmas. That's the whole theory. But we were also just, considering whether that's almost a truism and whether it has to be such a bad day just because it's called Blue Monday. And on a personal level, I'm actually feeling quite sprightly today. I was very tired at the end of last week, very much needed the weekend. But after a bit of a rejuvenation of the weekend, I'm swinging and ready to go again. So we're up to episode 11, and obviously this is just a really helpful way for me to sort of have a question that I get to answer in each episode. It keeps things a bit more contained, which, there's so many different things to talk about and consider in the world of entrepreneurship and social media marketing and inclusion and disability. There has to be some sort of what's it called? Parameters is the word I was looking for there. Maybe I'm not so with it today after all. I've definitely covered a lot about sort of things I've done entrepreneurially and sort of some tips on entrepreneurship, social media. We talked a lot about influencer marketing, organic and paid content, all that good stuff. And I guess some of the personal stories, like about when I talked about my back operation, certainly touch on the health side of me having an impairment, a disability. I was just sort of pondering that I'm speaking now a lot more as Purple Goat Agency, and in my particular role around sort of business development, I'm speaking to a lot of people at brands that basically want to understand how to be more inclusive. Some maybe have already got a lot further on the journey and they are a lot more inclusive and they've made lots of changes. But then the key is to then actually tell disabled people about the fact that you're now an inclusive and an accessible brand. So I was just thinking maybe it'd be great to actually do a Q&A, one of the questions today on that sort of topic where it's giving value to brands. But I think actually, as disabled consumers, if you're watching, or general consumers, you may have an interest in some of the things I'm talking about. You may agree or disagree. I don't mind either way. I just always love to learn new things and have good conversations and learn from each other. As I always say, what I put out is just my view and my experience. And so by all means, feel free to throw in your own thoughts and tips for brands as well. You may be at a brand where it's not really going to fall into your day-to-day job, but it still just might be of some interest. So the question was quite broad today, and I'm planning to go into maybe some more sort of industry specific. So, it could be looking at supermarkets or banking or fashion or whatever it might be. I'll be able to give a little bit more sort of specific thoughts on specific industries and help brands in that way. But also, I think in a way, Purple Goat's role is to bridge. So it's still very much about empowering disabled consumers and doing that by working with disabled influencers. But it's never a binary, I'm talking to a brand or I'm talking to a consumer. You're all just people watching. And I think at the end of the day, the more we have awareness of all these different topics, the better all round. So I think there's going to be some value one way or another in going into some more specific details as the Ask Sibs goes on each day. But for today, my top tips are the first one. I feel like I need drum roll and sound effects now. But I guess it's around, first of all, knowing the size of the community with the 1.3 billion people with a disability globally. In the UK, it's 14 million. So there's definitely something around just having that baseline awareness that there is a lot of people with a disability, and there's the legal part, the moral part, and of course the business opportunity that comes with all of this. So there's a little bit around that, but I would give my broader tip as number one tip is engage and listen with this community, with our community, my community, depends which perspective I'm talking from. But as a wheelchair user, as a person with a disability, I'm one person that is a disabled consumer. And yeah, I feel very proud to belong to the disabled community. And so yeah, there is a we involved, and we really have felt ignored and unheard and without a voice. And so once brands are aware we exist, it's really important that they actually speak to us and say, hey, if you want to buy our products and use our services and come into our buildings, what are the barriers that are put up generally in society, and particularly at the business? And in the end, it's just that research and insights. So I think point one would be research and insights, if we talk about it in a more businessy, sort of corporate-y sounding person. But in an everyday lay sense, it's just, whether it's one-to-one basis, whether it's surveys, focus groups, whatever it is, really, really just actually take the time to speak to everyday disabled people. And of course, there's a whole other thing about employing disabled people, and that may be that there are disabled employees that can give some insights. But I think, don't fall in the trap of, we asked the one wheelchair user in our company, let's call him John, and we've asked John what disabled people need, and now we've got a really good idea of what all disabled people need because John in the office said so. That's just not, it's not like going to work in terms of a moral principle thing. It's not going to help in terms of actually understanding a massive consumer base the way you would talk to any other consumer base. You have to do the research and get those insights. So point one, research and insights. Point two, we kind of touch on it where we talk about employing disabled people, but ultimately the leadership, the governance, the board of a big company, if it's a big company, but the governance structure, the board, the senior leadership team, which is very much what Valuable 500 have been getting pledges and commitments from. But yeah, the senior leadership in the board, all the way down to all the way through the hierarchy, all the way through a whole business, should have the same awareness that there are lots and lots of disabled consumers out there. Because if you have one person that is charged with doing point one, the research and the insights, fine, and that helps get things going. But the minute they then need to speak to the people that have the responsibility for the offices, like for the physical environment, if you like, or the IT systems or the marketing, whatever part of the business, there's going to be some needs to reduce barriers, overcome those barriers so that the disabled consumers have full inclusion and full access. So there's a whole piece, which is point two, which is the cultural change, a sort of inclusion culture, as I call it. And that's around education awareness internally. So we got point one, research and insights. Point two, and they're not chronological, to be honest. You may even want to do the internal bit first, but ultimately they're just generally three top tips I'm sharing. There's that all of the staff don't just understand disability and inclusion and the benefit, but drive it. They really push forward, and in every role across the whole business, actually they're looking for ways to make it more inclusive for other staff and obviously, as I keep saying, consumers. And then point three, and this was interesting because when we started Purple Go, we very, very much was not only going to do anything, we were very, whatever brands needed help with, we would signpost to those that are better equipped if we couldn't do it. But we also knew that we could do lots of things with the help of influencers in different directions. But ultimately, we were thinking, we work with influencers to create content, tell that authentic, genuine story of why a brand is accessible and inclusive. They get that in front of their followers, their community. We can use paid media. So you can see how all the dots are joining after the last couple of weeks of doing our SIBs. When I talked about organic and paid, we did all that good stuff with various clients and various brands because it was a communications campaign. And so in the end, point 3 is if you've done all the listening and you've got that internal culture that is making the changes that you're hearing from your customer listening piece of work, you've made the changes, you've become more accessible, but you don't tell anyone about it, then how do you expect disabled people to know that you've put a lift in your pub for wheelchair users, or you've got a hearing loop for the hearing and deaf community, hearing impaired and deaf community? So in the end, you have to tell people, and that's point 3, is that you can't just build it and expect people to come. It's a busy, noisy world. Every individual's busy. Everyone's got all sorts of things they're juggling and going on. So the best way to get your message out that you've made amazing changes and you're now the brand for disabled consumers, then obviously, you go out where there's attention. And at the minute, a lot of attention is on social media. You get a far better return on investment from your marketing budget than like a TV ad or a magazine ad where you can't track it. You don't know if anyone with a disability even watched that program, that TV, radio show where your advert was placed. So in the end, that's where social media is powerful, because you can actually reach the right parts of the disabled community. And we often segment into 5 or 6 segments. I think that's probably a question for another day I'll answer, how we segment the 14 million disabled people in the UK into sort of sub communities. And obviously, if a product is good for blind people, then you don't need to be speaking to wheelchair users. So there's all sorts of interesting things that happen there. So that's the end of the 3 tips. Very quick, very punchy. Hope it was interesting. Hope it was helpful. Definitely love to hear your thoughts and your ideas as well. And also, before I log off, we've got a few live comments, which I always love. So back earlier when I said I'll go into different brand sort of industries, and I sort of said, supermarkets, banking, fashion. Kevin said, please no to fashion, laugh out loud, anything but fashion. So maybe that one's not going to be for you, Kevin, but I know you work in the air travel industry. So yeah, definitely I could be giving some more insights and thoughts on how the air industry can be more inclusive to disabled passengers, as you and I have talked a lot about in the past. Don't worry, Gavin, I can see at the bottom, no more chat needed. I'm coming to you now. So yeah, Gavin said he couldn't miss this one. It's obviously a very important one in general, and a very important one for where Gavin works. Those that haven't seen Gavin, I'm pretty sure most of you will have done, but Gavin has worked with Purple Goat, but more importantly, we've done some really great public content creation pieces together, and interviews and chats all about how brands and businesses can engage more with disabled consumers. So Gavin's company has an app called the Welcome app, and it's sort of a way of helping the brand have better customer service, for the customer service agents to be more knowledgeable and empowered about the customers coming and what their disability may be and what their needs may be when they visit the store or the branch or whatever it might be. So that's just a little back kind of story into who Gavin is, how I know Gavin, and what his app does. And then Gavin just said, employ the very best, not just as a tick box CSR exercise. There are amazing employees out there, and the better the employee, the more chance they will shine and prove there is more to employment than CSR. And that very much speaks back to when I was talking about top tip 2, is that you need that inclusion culture. And one of the very powerful ways is, of course, to have disabled people as part of your staff and your employees. And as Gavin's saying, don't do it tokenistically and as a corporate social responsibility, a CSR exercise, but do it because the people are totally right and perfect for the job, whatever the different role may be. But in the end, you're going to benefit from that diversity of background of all your staff. And that goes for all the other protected characteristics that we talk about under diversity, equality, and inclusion. You just want that, the fact that society is diverse, customers are diverse, you really need to have a workforce that mirrors that, because you then understand all the different parts of your current and potential customer base. So employing disabled people is a really quick, powerful way of having super talented people, great skills, but also under that top tip too of inclusion culture, they're just going to bring that more naturally. So yeah, definitely a whole piece there that Gavin and I agreed on. Gavin saying, great to see Kevin out here. Another Gavin's done a lot in the air travel world, so he's met Kevin too. I quite like joining all the network up, all these people commenting I've got to chat to over the years really nicely, but it's great to bring everyone to the fore and bring that synergy. Likewise, Rebecca, who I spoke to last week, who is future-proofing houses for older and disabled people. Saying brilliant topic, Martin, very succinct. And then saying more, because obviously I was about to wrap up, which I am going to in a second, as the comments have died down, and I've got a meeting at 2 o'clock, which I don't want to be late for. But yeah, and then Kevin's just saying, haha, hey Gavin. So I love the live comments. It's always great to get that engagement and direct feedback, and not just speaking to my answers to the question, but particularly sort of Gavin there talking about Gavin having disabled employees. But yeah, speaking to that point from your perspective, Gavin, was really helpful. Sumeda has just said, before disabled consumers, are brands open to disabled employees? That's where you start. Absolutely, Sumeda. And I think that was my point, that my top tips weren't necessarily in a chronology. I just talked about insights, having the inclusion culture, and then a marketing communications strategy that is really, truly not just inclusive, like Gavin says, as a CSR, but it's actually for a better return on investment. But I think, as you're saying, maybe that, there is one element of, if you get disabled employees, then you can build from that as you grow. But like I always said, if you've got a disabled person in finance and you've got a question to do with marketing, then that person may not be the expert in that area, and they can give a generic disabled consumer insight, but you still should speak to consumers about given topics that brands should care about. But I still totally agree with you, Sumeda, that absolutely employing disabled people is a really important thing and a good place to start. Okay, well, it's a bit longer in a good way, because I think the last couple of weeks I've been finding my feet with the kind of questions to speak to and where it brings you guys more value. And it does feel like this one did sort of strike a chord, which is really good to see. As always, #RSibs, get your questions in. I'd love to absolutely answer anything and everything, as I said, within some, particular things that might not be stuff I want to open up about personal life. I'm just playing around now. But basically, get in any question you want to ask me. Very much, I keep saying I'm at this sort of cross-section of entrepreneurship and business, social media marketing, and disability and inclusion. And they're the key core tenets that I'm now working off of as we build Purple Goat into this global marketing agency. So just want to keep bringing you value with anything that is going to help you. So just get your questions in. Gavin said, agrees with Sumeda, it's like TV and movies start with presenters and stars and then it spreads. Better to do them all at the same time, but your point is very valid. And then got some chats going. Sumeda said, indeed, mate. Cool. I love the connection going on around this bit of video content as well. All right, so I'll be back tomorrow lunchtime. I've got it in my diary for 12, and then meetings overrun, and then I'm hungry, and so it's somewhere between 12 and 2. I'll try and get in a bit more of a rhythm so we can actually have a time that we can all log on. But in the meantime, just keep an eye, and it will be sometime around lunchtime on weekdays. We've got one more question before I go from Sumeda. While doing consumer research, you think brands focus on this segment? I'm not sure I totally understand the question. While doing consumer research, you think brands focus on this segment? I mean, basically, I don't know if you saw the beginning, Sumeda, but I was just saying that if there's 1.3 billion people globally with a disability, that brands should do consumer research. And another day, I'm going to talk about how to segment this massive underserved community of disabled people into ways that are easier to break down and get more relevant insights from different types of impairment groups. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we're certainly trying to help brands to do this, and it's not just about what we're doing at Purple Goat. There are lots of people, but I think in the end it's just that brands need to see disabled people as consumers the way they do all sorts of other audiences and communities, to do a bit of marketing speak. And then Gavin said, doubtful. It clearly demonstrates whether they truly get it or they are drinking the Kool-Aid. So yeah, lots of conversation. You guys feel free to carry on chatting as I head off. I'll join in again later on after my meeting and catch back up again on the thread. But I think, yeah, the point here is it's got to be done for the right reasons. It's got to be done properly. But if that's all done properly, everybody wins, both consumers and brands, and obviously the employment side as well. So I know we're all very much on the same page on this thread, and it's really good to chat with you all. All right, I'm going to go. Catch you tomorrow for the next episode, and have a great rest of your Monday. Bye-bye for now.